standard followers, but we see new faces tonight, which is lovely. And hello, everybody on Facebook. Tonight is our final meeting of the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. So this will be a little bit of a longer presentation because we're going to recap everything from the beginning to the end. So for those new faces that we see in the audience, you'll get a recap of the whole process as we go through. Just want to go to the next slide and I'll cover what we're going to be doing. So we're going to talk about what goes in the strategic investment plan, and we'll talk a little bit about that and how this process will go, what we've done and where it goes from here. And this is the chance to really kind of summarize the last 6 months worth of work on the DRI process. And just as a reminder, all of this is going to be posted on the on our website, cityofgloversvilledri.com, will be posted tomorrow morning, and then we'll post also the recording of this session for those people that didn't have the opportunity to be here tonight to listen or listen on Facebook. So, so I'll let the mayor and Wally, if you'd like, just to say a few words and welcome everybody here.
I'm just going to be very brief because this is really our consultants who are going to do most of this. And I just want to say that, you know, this is called a strategic investment plan. And every word, you know, means something. And it's investments from the DRI, from the grant that we've gotten, that are part of a strategy. And that's the big picture. The strategy is a method by which we achieve the goals, our DRI goals, which are, you know, vibrant, walkable, productive downtown that's interesting, that's, you know, improves the quality of life of the whole community and attracts visitors. And so, so that's what it is. It's a strategic investment plan, and that's what we've been working on for the past several months because, you know, we want to ensure that the investments that we're making are productive parts of the overall strategy and keep our eyes on the big picture. And so this is the final presentation. And so thanks everybody for coming.
Okay, and then there is a sign-in sheet in the back for those of you who haven't signed in. I would like to keep track of those that are coming. So, please sign in. Please sign in. We have comment cards available. They're on the seats around and on the sign-in table. And then we have, we'll do some Q&A. We'd like to go through the whole presentation so you can kind of see that whole big picture. And we'll go through that. And then, as always, you can always comment online and subscribe to the mailing list. We have been keeping a database of lists, and I think some of you, let's see, Pam shaking your head, those of you who signed in earlier have come to these, have gotten an email blast over we're having a meeting. So just before I get started, just to my colleagues up here, some of you may have seen them, Mike Lindolo from MRB Group, he's our economist on our team and helped shape the private sector projects with Danny Lappin from the Department of State, Aiden McKibben-Vaughn, also from Milan, and James Hannes, the downtown development specialist. Online is Susan Caravan, our senior planner. Some of you may have seen Laura Lorenko. She's out on maternity leave. I may have heard from her, but baby's happy and healthy, and she's on her maternity leave and doing that. So just in terms of the schedule, so you can see here that we're between the red bars. We're in June. We're having a public presentation on the strategic investment plan, what the mayor just described. We will be posting this PowerPoint online, which is effectively the executive summary of the strategic investment plan. We are still building out the full plan on our end in terms of the project profiles. We are getting our draft to Danny and his team at the Department of State and our state partners around July 8th, so just after the 4th of July. Should also mention the other state partners that are involved. Danny's with the Department of State. Our other state partners are New York State Empire State Development, Mike Reese and Allison Madden in that office. And then also the New York State Homes and Community Renewal is also the state partners. New this year is NYSERDA, is our fourth state partner. So we're able to tap into some ideas from NYSERDA in terms of sustainable measures of heating and cooling, decarbonization techniques for some of these buildings as we go forward. And that's been a real tremendous resource, and it's been plugging in quite nicely. So let's talk a little bit about the strategic investment plan. As the mayor said, this is the plan. So what we've done is we submitted an application last fall. The city wins the $10 million, the check's right there. And
Very cash.
I do know that it went for coffee after the big check presentation. Then we started working in December with Danny and the other state partners to begin to build a strategic investment plan. We started with the projects within the application. We did an open call for projects so people could submit other ideas, in which we did get a couple, actually. We then worked with our local planning committee to refine those projects and work with them. And just a note about the downtown revitalization initiative and what it is. It's really not intended to be money to spark it. It's intended to be money to help projects really get to the finishing line. Because it's tough, right? The upstate New York economy is tough. Assessed values are difficult. There's a lot happening if somebody's trying to redo their building or build out their space for certain things. And the DRI money is intended to find the projects that are kind of the most ready, so the most shovel ready, ready to go, where that money can and that project can spark revitalization in the entire downtown. So it's sort of the DRI in a nutshell. This is the 5th year, and this is the year that Gloversville won. So these dollars and what we're doing with them is that we have a vision and goals, and so we're going to share that with you. We also did a downtown profile and assessment where we looked at number of people living downtown, number of housing units, what's the parking like, what are the sidewalks like. We really assessed the condition of our downtown revitalization area. Then the management and implementation plan, we're going to go through all these pieces. The management implementation plan is like, okay, if this is it, this is our last meeting, and now the money's going to come for certain projects into the community. Who manages that and how to get it done? And we've been having a number of meetings, and we're going to share that with you, the ideas of that. And then the detailed profiles of the projects recommended for DRI funding. And those are multi-page project profiles with a lot of detail, budgets, schedules, information about the project. How does the public feel about it? How many jobs are going to be created? A whole host of information that we're creating. And we'll share with you a summary of those projects tonight. So we mentioned that we worked with the local planning committee. We'll show you who's on that committee in the next slide. We had regular public input. We've integrated all the previous planning efforts and ongoing planning efforts because the city is doing a local waterfront revitalization plan and a brownfield opportunity area plan that some of you in the room are working on. And then, of course, we mentioned the state partners. So go ahead. So I won't read through the names, but this is the local planning committee. Our co-chairs were Wally Hart and Mayor DeSantis, and then a broad spectrum of folks across the community. The LPC was formed with input from the city and the state, helping to define who would be on the local planning committee. LPC is the acronym that we use. So let's talk a little bit about public engagement. We had all the local planning committees were open to the public. We had the ability for comments online, comment cards at the local planning committee meetings, and I won't read all these either, but to summarize them, we had public meetings and open houses. We started this when we were still dealing with more higher rates of COVID, and then sort of now ended where we can actually be in person and do this in person, which is lovely. So we had some virtual open houses where things were online and people were able to provide input. By the time that we got to our open house number 2, where we shared the projects, if any of you came to the Glove, that was in the Glove, we had about 20 easels set up all through the Glove, and people were able to go through and be able to know if they like a project or not and pick their top 10 projects. I'll share those results in a minute. We then have our public presentation tonight. The focus group interviews are, we actually sat down with a whole group of people, seniors, downtown businesses. We had arts and cultural events. So we sat down with a whole different groups within the community to understand what's downtown revitalization to them. What do they like to see? What would they like to have in Gloversville? So at the public house the second public house, that's where we shared all the projects. So, okay, so the LPC is beginning to narrow it down, but they weren't yet narrowed down. So every project was still considered at this open house. And people came in and they got dots and stars. And so people were able to go to each board and be able to determine if they liked the project, if they loved it, liked it somewhat, a little, and not so much for the dot. And then they got to take 10 stars and choose the top 10 projects. So each of these bar graphs we also have on the project slide, so I won't go through all of them, but in general, the dark green bar is that people love it, and the light green bar is like it. The red bar is not so much. So we'll go through a few of these, and you'll see Glove City Lofts, Eccentric Club, St. Thomas Square, the restaurant at City Hall, and renovations of the carriage house. I'll go to the next projects after this. So just in general on this page, well, I could tell you that anything with a restaurant or food scored very, very well. And I think the highest scoring behind the glove was Cravings Bakery. And people really, you know, which we heard when we did the downtown profile, that people really want to see restaurants that will bring more people to downtown Gloversville and really, you know, create that active environment. People also liked any type of really kind of public improvements that would bring people downtown or have year-round events. We'll talk about St. Thomas Square, but that's involving Castelline Park, the farmers market area, and looking at an ice skating rink. So that's something that can happen year-round if there's people downtown year-round for youth and kids. So that, you know, the Recreation Commission is quite excited about this. There's the glove, the top bar, very popular. And again, coffee, those types of things that were very, very popular. Again, we have just a few more. The piazza is the area, the vacant area on South Main Street. We'll show you a kind of quick design that we did for that, a concept plan for that. Brewing beer also scored well, quite well. Art is also very popular. That was kind of a fun station. If anybody came, we actually asked people to actually put a little pin on the map in terms of where they would like to see public art. And we're talking about murals, sculptures, lighting, that kind of stuff. The Downtown Business Fund, again, we'll talk about that, but that's a loan fund or a grant and or loan fund that is possible for projects that don't quite make the DRI list. In fact, the guidance from the state is that anything under $100,000 is not eligible for DRI funding. Anything over $100,000 is eligible for DRI funding. So what happens to the projects that maybe aren't over 100,000, they might be able to get funded from that fund. And it's not very different than the Gloversville Loan Fund. It's the same kind of mechanism. And then coffee stored well. So go ahead. Cravings, we already mentioned that. And Trail Station Park, that is the park where the city already has a grant for a spray pad, but there wasn't enough money in that grant to do restroom changing room area. So the idea is to put in a building for restroom changing room and active areas right along the street. So then we ask people, you know, take the stars and let's determine what your top 10 priorities are. You know, again, we won't go through these in detail, but you can see the glove, Cravings, restaurants, St. Thomas Square, Glove City Brewing, Glove City Lofts. That's the only new build, brand new build from the ground up that is in the DRI, which is across from City Hall and across from the Senior Center, right on the corner of the old shopping plaza, that area, which would be a middle income housing for artists concept. And then, again, looking more at, just kind of going down the line here, coffee, are, down to, some of the ones that didn't receive very many stars, were, Daniel Hayes, the Eccentric Club, Happy Mug. And then, we did have a few projects or one project at 18 West Fulton, right? East Fulton. And that project, never really materialized. The people sponsoring that project weren't quite ready for that project. So that's some of the public input that we had. So using the public input, we, early public input, ongoing public input, working with the LPC, we drafted a vision statement. And this vision statement we shared at the first open house, and people were able to comment on the vision statement, determine if they liked it. And we got some good comments, and the LPC made a few tweaks to the vision statement as it from the original drafts. So just before we jump into the vision statement, if some of you have not seen this online, this is the DRI boundary. The guidance from the state is that it has to be compact and walkable. So the idea of defining this boundary was one of the most painstaking things that we did when we wrote the application. Because we do know that it's very, very important to have a compact and walkable.
I have other
environment.
people on it.
In fact,
Yeah,
we did
I'll
learn
resend her
from
link.
a member of the Regional
I'll
Economic
text her.
Development Council that the boundary that's defined is one of the most important considerations in determining if a community should be winning the DRI. And so right now we're looking at generally on the north side, Spring Street, down to Pine Street on South Main Street. We are going over to just past the library on the east side. On the west side, we come over just past Daniel Hayes, that sort of tail over that area. So within this area, we have, already your City Hall, your Farmers Market, your library, we have a historic district. We have a lot of city-owned land, mostly parking lots in this area. But a very walkable environment, and the LPC chose not to make any amendments to this boundary because of the guidelines from the state. So this is our final DRI boundary. And so this is the vision statement. And I don't normally read slides, as you can see, but I'll read this vision statement because a lot of hard work went into the vision statement, and it actually sets the stage for everything that follows. So it's very important. You all, many of you in this room participated and provided input on this vision statement. So downtown Gloversville possesses all the qualities of a successful city center. This is a vision for the future. It's historic buildings, inviting public spaces, varied housing options, business and leisure offerings, and job opportunities inspire people to be part of a lively and renewed downtown. Whether it's visiting one of Gloversville's museums, art galleries, restaurants, shops, or unique parks, there are a variety of activities to choose from. A highly walkable network of sidewalks and decorative lights, benches, shade trees, and public art add to the ambiance and create an inclusive, safe, and attractive setting. A grassroots development approach cultivates pride and reputation as a community of inclusiveness and diversity that fosters arts, culture, and entertainment. These characteristics, combined with a strategic position as a southern gateway to the Adirondack Mountains, make downtown Gloversville a regional economic engine and premier destination to live, build a business, and visit. We're kind of picking up on the geography of Gloversville and your proximity, and really picking up on all the things that are really kind of already getting started in downtown Gloversville with arts, and your parks are lovely. They may need a little enhancement here and there, but you have a really lovely network of parks and community, and the historic downtown is really beautiful. The historic building stock that you have. So as we go on to go ahead. Michael will speak in a moment. His name are on these slides. He decided I do all the talking mostly.
That's to everyone's benefit.
So as we think about going forward and the projects that are important for the revitalization and achieving that vision, we do have the we did the downtown profile. And I won't go over this in detail, but we identified a few, challenges that the DRI projects can help overcome, right? On economic development, housing, getting more of a mix of income, housing types downtown. Lack of restaurants, we already talked about. Slower retail growth, you're getting a few, retail shops coming in. Accommodations, bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Yes, you have sidewalks. Some of them are missing or not in great shape, or the shade trees are aging and not as healthy as they can be. We have connections. You have a beautiful rail trail that comes right through the center of your city. And as you go through that rail trail, you're not really realizing that downtown, is over this way. So that lack of connectivity, which is something the previous planning efforts have looked at and talked about with the communities. Recreation, we talked about your parks. Some of them use a little bit of a, facelift. We have vacant underutilized property, organizational capacity. You have had a downtown development specialist position only for the last couple of years, and it continues to build. So we want to encourage that because the management and implementation of this program is going to be important. And then we talked about parking and signage. So those are some of the things we keep in mind as we think about some of the projects, the selection of projects. The other factor that goes into the selection of the projects, we have a vision statement, and then we have goals and strategies to implement those goals. They sort of build off of each other. And again, these are a lot of words, so I'm not going to read them all. And they are online, City of Gloversville, DRI.com. And we have a few goals that build off of some of those challenges and then help build up the vision. So we have the first goal is to spur economic development in a variety of ways in which we can do that, because economic development is broad. It is downtown revitalization, looking at regional assets, looking at jobs, looking at resources for your businesses and entrepreneurs. Those are some of the strategies that we want to consider to achieve this goal. We want to look at cornerstones. You have beautiful buildings that are your cornerstones of your downtown. The historic buildings, reusing those buildings, looking at mix of uses within those buildings. So, for example, the City Hall, renovating a restaurant in City Hall, you have apartments above, that's a mixed use building. That's something we want to encourage. And then actually preserving the character of your downtown and the history of your downtown. People will come just to look at those beautiful buildings. We do see that in downtown revitalization. Housing, really a full range of housing. You have senior housing right there. We have other types of housing downtown. We want to actually think about a range of housing, from affordable housing to middle income housing, market rate housing. We want to, and that's all in an effort to attract downtown residents. Downtowns are more lively when you can have more of a 24/7 activity where people are living down, shopping downtown, working downtown, and also living downtown. The public realm, right? There's sidewalks in your streets, your parks. What we want to do is really think about enhancing that public realm. And the first one, the natural resources in the environment. The KW is right next to the FJG Rail Trail. What a beautiful asset that you have in the center, going through all of the center of your city, but a great asset that can really bring variety to your downtown revitalization. Streetscapes, those are your sidewalks and your street trees and bike lanes. Public art, we spoke about that. Big installations, not just little things. Large murals, big pieces of sculpture, fun with lighting that really will attract people to the community. Spaces, right, for people to gather. That's really where the piazza idea comes in. And then your cultural opportunity, arts and cultural opportunity. You do have a great artist community. You have a Gloversville Arts Collective group of folks. We have to think about that. Again, arts and culture are an economic driver for downtown revitalization. And you have, the makings of that, you have the pieces of that going on. And this DRI strategic investment plan can help bolster that. Looking at a wide variety of arts and cultural venues. You have a lot of events, your Future Fridays, You have other, events that are happening in your downtown, encouraging that type of thing, because that brings people to the center of the city. And, really, think about it as market Gloversville in that way. It's an arts and cultural hub where people can come and enjoy a wide variety of offerings. And then finally, our sixth goal is to enhancing mobility for all users. So we are talking about enhancements to sidewalks, bike lanes, connections, crosswalks. They have to be for all users. We're not all getting, we're all not as young as we used to be. And, we do have folks with some disabilities, right? So we have to think about everybody being able to get around the community, whether it's public transit, walking, crossing on a sidewalk. We really need to think about, visually impaired, aging population, especially with your seniors right here, that might want to walk, around. So it's an important consideration, and downtown can really fulfill that walkable environment for people with all of their ages and abilities. And thinking about not just bikes and walking, but maybe scooters, electric vehicles, buses, those types of things. You have some chargers out here for EV chargers. I think the Center for Regional Growth have put in, that, it's nice thinking about the future in terms of what we can offer for people to be able to get around. So we have our vision statement, we have our public inquiry, we have our vision statement, we have our goals, we have our strategies. With this all equipped with the LPC, and we have our working project list this whole time, kind of running parallel paths. We have project evaluation criteria. The state has a set of criteria that we are required to look at. And then we created our own criteria too for the city of Gloversville. So we have two sets of criteria that the projects have to meet. They have to meet just one, but we do check everything. And the LPC had a checklist of evaluation criteria, and we evaluated the matrix and the projects. And we looked at them. Many projects met most, if not all, of the project criteria. But we're sharing with you those criteria to share with you how the LPC was able to evaluate the projects as we were moving forward. And it's one of the evaluation criteria, only one. Public input was another one. The readiness and other aspects of the projects were other criteria. But these are some of the criteria that we did look at. And again, I won't read all these, but with the state goals, we had to check at least one. Things like, does the project create a sense of place? Does it attract a new business that adds to the mix of uses in the downtown? Does it enhance public art, public spaces with arts and culture? Does it grow the local property tax? Does it provide amenities for downtown living? Does it reduce greenhouse gas emissions in a variety of ways? So some of the criteria that we use. And then the next slide are our Gloversville specific goals that build on the state goals. They kind of go hand in glove, if you will, no pun intended. The Gloversville goals was to obviously spur economic development. We were trying to spur economic revitalization of the city via your downtown. We want to enhance and create your downtown cornerstones, these beautiful buildings that you have. A full range of housing, so you can see that these build out of the goals that we have and the strategies. That public realm, we want a safe and inviting public realm. Cultural opportunities, and then mobility for all users. So these are the specific goals that the LPC used for the city. Okay, now I get to take somewhat of a break. But before Michael joins me, so this is real, Michael, we'll talk in a moment. If you want to go to the next slide. This map is actually hot off the presses this afternoon. We will, again, this will be online. The LPC, through the process, has narrowed the projects down to what we call a slate of projects. And that was at our last meeting about 2 weeks ago at the Glove Theater. The LPC has voted unanimously in the affirmative of these projects that you're about to see. These projects will go to the state in the July 8th plan. And the state will, and I'll go over this again at the end. The state will review all of that material that I said, the page, each, multiple pages for each project and supplemental materials. And the state will determine which of the projects that are being submitted will receive the $10 million. This total slate that we're gonna go through is 11.6
million.
11.6 million. You want to shoot over your target when you're submitting this plan, in case something happens or something drops out, or the state has more questions and that project just isn't quite ready, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, we're putting, your best foot forward and saying these projects have been vetted by all these things that you just saw. And these are the final projects that the LPC feels is qualified per everything that you just saw, meeting the criteria, they're ready, et cetera, to move forward. And so then we map them. And this map will go into the plan for the states to be able to see. Danny's been in every meeting, but his colleagues haven't, right? So they may not be as familiar with Gloversville, so we actually want to show them where everything is. What was interesting about this map is that, and we've spoken about this before with the LPCs, it's sort of the heart of the center of North Main Street. There's a nice cluster. It's the Glove, the carriage house, the bank, et cetera. So it's nice to see that cluster there, because in the experience of downtown revitalization, if we can cluster some revitalization efforts together in one spot, they really will, you'll see it spread, up and down.
Different colors?
Yep, so, right, so the just as you're looking at this on those online, the dark blue are private projects that sponsored by private individuals. The light blue or the kind of it's light blue are public projects, and then the orange are nonprofits. So we have 2 nonprofits, and then the lighter blue are some of the projects. So we're going to go through these each right now, one at a time, and you'll see a summary of each project.
So I've been working with Lisa now for almost 2 decades, and she does a lot of the talking. But that's not a bad thing. Like, it's her energy and her love for the communities that she serves that really inspires me. So I'm just going to go. Let's give her a round of applause. She works and she loves more dearly than last. So it's good to see that.
Lovers are the most.
Good answer.
So on these slides, I'll just show you the layout of it. You haven't seen it, but this is the existing condition photo. This is a future condition photo. We have all the funding elements here, the project sponsor, a little description of it. And then down here, this is what Lisa was referring to before from the public survey. So in the green bars we received a lot of positive votes. A red bar would indicate it received a lot of that. I'm not so sure about this one. Okay. So you guys have heard, many of you have heard me many times go through the projects. I'll give you the high level details about them as we go. And then, if there are questions later on, certainly we can certainly go through that. But, the first one is, as Lisa mentioned, is our absolute only new build, which means to say right now it's a parking lot right across from City Hall and next to the Senior Center. And we're going to have a great big building over here afterwards, and 75 mixed income units and 2,000 square feet of gallery space. Some of the units will be dedicated for artists, and the idea is to promote it as a cultural and art activity and to get some more flavor downtown to add to your already existing cultural and art center. It is also by far the largest project at $21 million. So obviously that's a huge amount of money coming into the city. In addition to the 11.6, Lisa mentioned earlier, $11.6 million of DRI money. We're also proud to say that in total, that $11.6 million is turning into $39.5 million of total project. So you're actually able to take that $10 million check and hopefully multiply it by 4, right? So that's a real positive. So again, here briefly, we're looking at $21 million of projects, $1,250,000 of DRI requests. So this project is asking 6%. Canary Development is the owner. And I already mentioned it, and it got high public support. And we have a nice beautiful picture. All right,
So, is it finished?
that's the next.
We'll round robin this. I'll talk about the public projects. So this is what we're, and all the names are supposed to have some type of adjective in it. So activating St. Thomas Square for year-round activities. This is a public project. Right now, there's a picture up there of the farmer's market and the parking lot around it. And Main Street's here. So what we're looking at is some sort of a facelift or improvements to Castellan Park, which would then connect right to the farmer's market. For this project, that image there is it's a memorial wall for the St. Thomas factory workers. So this project incorporates a donation from that family to honor the workers of that factory. So that would be in kind of front of the farmer's market. And then looking at using a portion of the parking area for a skating rink for winter, and connecting that area over to the farmer's market. There's sort of a little dashed line in there. The idea is maybe there could be sort of a temporary structure underneath the farmer's market pavilion for skate rentals for kids who don't have skates or the ability to do that. And then maintaining some of the parking and creating a green walkway, a green edge to connect some of the neighborhoods to the top, from the north down Elm Street to the farmer's market area. The funding, the total project, so working with this, we've come up with these conceptual designs, and we have a cost estimate of $1.6 million. And the DRI funding request would be $1.1 million for this project.
All right, next project is at the former City Hall. You guys can see obviously on Main Street. The upper floors of the building are already occupied with residential. The project doesn't involve the upper floors. It's the lower floor. An existing restaurant is going to move into this space. They're going to add on a bakery. And so there's be some additional activity there. And there's going to be seating obviously in there. You can see some, these are images of what it might look like inside, sample images like that. Total project cost is $750,000. DRI funding request is 1/3, about $250,000. And Capano Enterprises, who's here tonight, is the sponsor. Another project is the Carriage House. This building right now is vacant, obviously prominent building on Main Street. Much larger project, $3.4 million. They're asking for 40%, $1.36 million. The main floor would be a restaurant and brewery, and the basement would be used for production facilities, and then would be part of the second floor would be also used as part of that restaurant brewery operation. The remainder of the second floor and the whole third floor would be turned into 7 studio apartments. So the traditional residential over commercial on Main Street, a very typical development pattern. Got very high marks, as Lisa mentioned, anything with coffee or beer in it, got very high marks in the public. We do have architectural.
We know what we like.
renderings, we have engineering estimate, and it appears ready to go.
Another crowd favorite, city favorite was the restoration of the Glove, which is something that's been talked about in this community for a very long time. This is a perfect DRI project because this is a cornerstone of the community, and being somewhat reactivated now, but being an old theater, it has some needs, of course, and so we're having about $2 million allocated to the restoration of the Glove. And these will be used for inside it to restore to air conditioning, restore the plaster walls on the side, if any of you've been in there. And then stage equipment in the back, rigging equipment in the back is very old and unsafe for use, really, unless I guess you're experienced rigger. And then the other is to restore the balcony above there. So if any of you have been in there, the balcony and the walls, to restore the walls, and then air conditioning, because if we restore the walls, we need the air conditioning so that the walls stay in good condition. And then the Glove Board is actually, has raised their own money to do the sprinkler system within this building too. So with that sprinkler system, they'll be able to increase their capacity and be able to do larger shows, which then helps with the financial workings of the Glove Board. Very popular in the community. And so with a nonprofit and obviously the need of this theater, it's a $2 million ask and 1.96 million in DRI funding. The rest comes from the fundraising that that group did for the sprinkler system. And then right next door, attached by more than a shared wall, physically attached, is the Shine Memorial Arts Initiative. Kind of like former City Hall. This project is only on the 3rd floor. It's about 3,400 square feet of renovation space. Obviously, this building is slowly undergoing some renovations over time with members of your community. That 3,400 square feet, part of that will be restrooms and workings and hallways. But the exciting news is that it would be a glove museum. There is a glove museum now by Daniel Storto, who has his storefront in that building on Main Street. He actually has a glove museum in another community in Schoharie County, and he would move that glove museum here to Gloversville upstairs. A nonprofit board's being set up, and he's actually agreed to chair that board as well. And so that board will run the museum. The other exciting piece of it is what we're calling artist co-working space. There's sort of an example image from a place actually in Troy, New York, where artists can share space, share ideas, share creativity, and work together in that area. And again, that would all be run by the same nonprofit. So there's a lot of synergy through there. So very exciting. This did get pretty good remarks from the community. The total project cost, again, this is for 3,400 square feet within the building, it's not the whole building. $407,000, and the DRI funding cost about $346,000, just around. So the next one is what we call the streetscape, right? So how we're connecting people primarily from just over here, the FJG rail trail. How can we get them to downtown safely, right? From your trail station park. And so the area in this map highlighted in red with the red outline is the area that we are conceding of sidewalks, Church Street. So from City Hall, Frontage Road, up to Bleecker Square would have sidewalks, street trees, and what we call a cycle track. And there's an image of that right here. So bikes can go the same, stay on the same side. You don't have to be on each side of the street. So there's enough room to do that. And then we would have new sidewalks and new street trees there. We come into Bleecker Square in front of that beautiful historic church and enhance that area too. So enhance that intersection with some maybe decorative pavers, maybe a piece of art, sculpture in that area. So that if you're coming from City Hall or Trail Station Park, you come up Church Street through Bleecker Square, and then enhancing Elm Street as we go north to again begin to connect to some of the neighborhoods to the north there. When you're on Elm Street, that would be streets and sidewalks. We don't have room for a bike lane like this, but we would put what we call sharrows. So we paint the pavement with maybe some of you have seen them with a little bicyclist in the arrow, meaning share the lane. Cars share the lane with bicyclists. That whole stretch is about $1.8 million, and the DRI funding request of $1 million, so 60%. The city, I should say, on the city projects, agreed, actually, when they made the application to set aside some money to match some of these public projects. So that's why you see the DRI would cost a little bit less than the project amount, because the city council has agreed to put money towards these projects.
City National, this project is actually, you can't quite see all the buildings, there's 4 joined buildings here. And it's related to all 4 of them. They would like to attract a new financial services tenant back into that space, preferably something along with a lending institution like a bank or other ones that's interfacing with the public. This one is interesting because although the developer is not directly creating the jobs, there's actual, this does have potential for significant job creation. I think this is one of the highest ones in the mix right now. So while it didn't necessarily get the highest marks from the public input, it did have the highest, some of the highest potential job creation. The total project cost is about $1 million. It's mostly interior, actually it's all interior renovations. The DRI is 40%, or $410,000. And a lot of the space you can see in one of the interior photos here, a lot of the space is already set up as a, as a bank, obviously. They hope to maintain the historic aspects of some of that space if possible. And they would be adding 7,500 square foot of new office space.
All right, this is the piazza, so this is the vacant, the current condition in the upper left-hand picture there is a current condition, so that's where the, sadly, the building had to come down. But when it came back down and we looked into that space, the backdrop of the historic buildings around the side was just really amazing. And we immediately started thinking about, could we create an urban plaza, which could be used for events, music, food trucks. Working with a member of our consulting team, Tom Politi, who's an urban designer, we started to create, where this is an image of what it could potentially look like. So we pick up the backdrop of those buildings with a stage right next to the buildings. We would have sort of a grove of a grove of trees to provide shade. It's really important for people these days, because people are seeking to get out of the sun. Movable furniture, maybe, you could put food trucks out on South Main Street. And then we even thought, like, okay, if you're a restaurant in Gloversville and you don't have a food truck, you don't want a food truck or you can't afford a food truck, create a space within this piazza where you could come in as a restaurateur, and there'll be electricity, available and a space available. So even if you're just a pizza place and you want to sell your pizza there, you could, make your pizzas and come be there. So trying to integrate it with other provide opportunities for a wide variety of folks. The example, if any of you have been to New York, that we are kind of building up in this Paley Park, and that's that example there. This would also be, if you see the pavers, the brick pavers and the trees, what we want to create too is a impervious surface, so that when rain hits the water, it's actually going into the ground. And that's what we call green infrastructure. So it's a way to deal with stormwater, and the way that the city took down those buildings and filled in that space. It's actually a perfect prime example of how we'll be able to do green infrastructure. You can't always do it given the engineering or the subsurface conditions, but the way that your DPW crew did that work was perfect for this type of condition. So it's $725,000 and $435,000 of the DRI request.
All right, we'll see brewing, very high marks from the public. It seemed to be a nice way to activate some space, get some people out. You can see it's a relatively nondescript, well, I think everyone knows the building, it's been sitting there, it's relatively nondescript. You can see some of the proposed imagery, some nice logo right up there. I think it'll be kind of a nice way to highlight the space. I should say that it's for both production and consumption on site. So there'll be a little kitchen on site and the brewing as well. The serving will happen both indoor and outside. There's going to be a beer garden, so there'll be some outdoor seating. I think it's going to make the space look really nice, despite the landscaping and pavers that they're going to put in. I'd say the other strong point that certainly came to our attention was there's strong financial backing with respect to the project. It's almost a $900,000 project. They're asking for $358,000, 40%, $358,000 will support the DRI, and they have their other funding line at this point. So it's a high level of readiness.
We talked about art, and so in this case, we were looking to allocate $500,000 to an art fund, or not an art fund, but to install art. this would be, it's 100% request. If this is funded by the state, the city would be the recipient. Usually we work with the Gloversville arts community to identify different types of artists. We present some examples here. Some sculpture. It's a very famous Adirondack artist that's from right near here in Gloversville. Murals. That mural in the top right picture is actually right around the front corner in the upstate coffee area, or even lighting. You know, you can do a lot of neat things with lighting. We're putting together a concept for the lighting of the alley by the Glove between the old City Hall and the Glove for a safer connection back to the parking lot behind. And it's just a concept of how we may be able to do that. We're playing around with the concept of actually using some old organ pipes to maybe have some like vertical lighting through that alley. So this would be, working with your artist to install art, and the community would decide where that art goes and what type of art it is. This is fun.
So likewise, this is another fund as opposed to a specific project. Lisa mentioned that the minimum threshold for a business was $100,000 DRI ask. And so for a really small business, that's a lot, right? Because they'd have to come up with about, 300, right? We wanted to be able to serve our small businesses. So the proposed project here is actually a business improvement fund and a downtown business fund, where anybody that has one of the smaller projects can come, be administered locally, and they will apply locally for that fund, much like the current loan fund or the microenterprise program fund. In this case, we would be putting in $600,000. We would be asking for some level of private match. We've estimated that at about another $400,000. That's why the total project cost is $1 million here. And again, the idea here is how do we help people that couldn't necessarily make it all the way through as a big project, but they can be served with this. And the state also allows administrative funding for these programs. So there's no burden on the locals for funding. Upstate Coffee, right around the corner here, they are expanding production. They want to be able to get into lines of business, and so this project is about purchasing additional production equipment. That additional production equipment would allow them to expand jobs by somewhere between 12 jobs and possibly as many as 20 jobs. So significant job creation project here, and certainly a feel-good story about a business, local business, and locally owned business. Their ask is 40% of their $750,000 project, or $300,000. And again, all of that is production equipment that will be here. Cravings, another feel-good story here, an existing business in the city that unfortunately had to shut down during COVID. And just as it was about to open up, unfortunately suffered a car accident that blew the building. They wanted to be able to continue to move forward with their business. So they have identified a new location. The new location there, they have purchased the property at this point, and they will be installing a cafe and a bakery facility in there. There's a lot of equipment. In fact, it's predominantly equipment that's part of this $313,000 total project cost. They're asking for a third funding of $103,355 and extremely high marks. I think there's just one very irate person decided to vote against it. Everybody else is they're angry. They need to get their muffin.
All right, down to the end here. I already mentioned this earlier, but this is the area right outside our window here, pretty much. So Trail Station Park, Fulton, or Frontage Street here, West Fulton. And the idea here is that the city has a grant from Office of Parks and Recreation to do a spray pad and some walking paths and some trees and sitting areas, which would not only be a benefit for the children of the community, but also the seniors at King Carroll Apartment. They often sit over there just in the asphalt. So providing a place to sit and relax and shade. There was not enough money in that grant to do a restroom building, so the purple square there would be restroom and changing area. And then even it's big enough where there's some activity space, so if your Parks and Recreation committee wanted to do some activities within the park, kind of fronting the creek and having the creek come by, so the building would be multiple, serve multiple purposes. We had some public input early on about restrooms downtown, and this would provide that ability to have restrooms downtown. So right now, the project costs that building is about $550,000. We're showing some images of maybe an old train station, maybe playing off the idea of the FJG rail trail as the architectural style of that building, all to be determined, but just kind of playing around with some ideas here.
All right, and I believe this is our last, Daniel Hayes Mill. This project, Lisa's also working on the city's BOA, the Brownfield Opportunity Area. This particular site is part of a priority area there for redevelopment. So we were very excited to get an application to call for projects on the Daniel Hayes building. It's an old mill. There's actually 4 stories, 3 above ground stories, and it's somewhat below grade 4th story. The project came in, the original concept was to redevelop the whole site. In talking with the developer, they wanted to scale it back to just this building for now, but they do have a phase 2 plan, which would be all the adjoining areas around this particular building. So just the phase 1 is a $2.6 million project. They're asking for just a hair over $1 million or 40%. This would be a residential project, so conversion from its current industrial use, or its historic industrial use, I should say, to roughly 20 units. They have had an architect in, they've been really throwing a lot at this. An architect in, they've been doing cost estimation. We've been dealing with them. They had an environmental engineer go in to look at some potential solutions for both the phase 1 project that we're talking about, but also in the future phase 2 project around the building. And they really, the vision of the owner is the entire redevelopment. They want to take one at a time, get this done, get it successful, and move on. This one received fairly positive remarks. I think my interpretation of the other remarks is that it was a little bit unclear at the public meeting what exactly was being proposed and if there's any additional impacts. There was also some questions about parking that the developer was able to answer. They own the lot immediately adjacent to all off-street parking would impact the neighborhood in terms of parking and traffic. And so this one is moving forward as part of the state.
Okay, and then, I mentioned that we had the open call for projects, and then there might be smaller projects or projects that really weren't ready, right? DRI is about not the spark money, but the money to help close the gap, right? So we had some good ideas, and, it was hard for the LPC to make some decisions. But we do have the ability to include projects in the plan that aren't recommended for DRI funding, but they get recognized in the plan. And we won't go through these in detail, but there's a variety of them. So they're not recommended for DRI funding, but they will be included in strategic investment plans that raises awareness of them. So if any of these projects do begin to evolve and get the information together and want to move forward, because they're in a plan, kind of like your local waterfront revitalization plan or your brownfield opportunity area plan, or your comprehensive plan, when projects are in there, you get extra points from the grant reviewers, and Danny will back me up on this. So it's important that, there's plans that are vetted by the community, considered by the community, match the vision, et cetera. So we do have the opportunity to quite simply list these projects with a very brief description in the strategic investment plan, should any of these projects evolve and want to seek additional money. So that's a nice opportunity. That's relatively new. The state's sort of done this in previous DRI rounds, but not to this level. So it's a nice opportunity to be able to recognize some of the other great projects that had come in this process. Okay, this is sort of the last piece of what we're considering. So again, the plan goes to the state in July at $11.6 million. They decide who gets the money. When the money starts to come out, the private individuals that Michael reviewed they contract directly with the state for their own projects. The public projects will largely be the city, the Trail Station Park, St. Thomas Square, et cetera, the streetscape enhancements. The nonprofits they will also direct a contract with the state. So it becomes and then you say, okay, well then how is this really get managed? How do we keep moving forward and make sure that the money's being allocated correctly, that people are, continue to act on, what their project ideas are as they move forward. So fortunately, there's already a model set up here in Gloversville. And that is that the city works with this facility, Ron Peters is in the back, for the Center for Fulton County Center for Regional Growth. And they currently employ James Hannes, who's the downtown development specialist. And James sits in this building, but there's a partnership between the city and CRG to try to encourage downtown revitalization. And it's one of the key things of why Gloversville won this round, because there is this synergy that's happening. The city, they meet weekly. They meet weekly with other folks within the city, whether it's the city clerk, the finance commissioner. You also have Nick Zabowski, who's Orion Management, who does all your grant writing administration. He's key to this. He sits in on those weekly meetings as well. So there's a lot of good dialogue that's happening already in the city. And we are just really going to continue that model. We want to boost it up a little bit, and we have some other ideas that we'll talk about. So right now, it's, what we want to do is get a contract between the city and CRG, Center for Regional Growth, to formalize this relationship. We have this relationship now, but we really kind of say, okay, this is what's going to happen. We want to continue to fund this position, and then maybe also call it a DRI coordinator or something like that. This is TBD. You can determine this as we go forward. But this position, in addition to the duties that James already does, would also be sort of the coordinator, the herding of the cats, if you will. There'll be many. Some of the key aspects, though, in talking with Ron, and he brings up a good point, and I thought this was an interesting take on it, is that I mentioned that the private individuals will contract directly with the state, right? So it's the contract. But they still might need some help and some handholding to make sure that those projects really get completed as they said they were going to get completed. That's where CRG is going to come in. CRG is going to help work with these private individuals and loan some assistance. CRG is very familiar with the contracting abilities or needs and requirements of the state agencies. So that's really nice. I have not seen that in other DRIs. So there's a little bit of hand-holding to ensure we're really getting to the finishing line. The city would oversight the public projects. And they continue the bi-weekly meetings. And then the administrative report, that's where Orion Management comes in, Nick Zabowski's group right now. He does all of the paperwork. He does the payment requests. He does the reporting requirements. He does the minority and this enterprise compliance, et cetera. I see Chris shaking your head because they probably did this all of the library. So that's sort of the DRI. But then you also have the GRIP, which is the Downtown Improvement Fund. And we're proposing to continue the relationship that we already have, which is the board of directors for the Gloversville Rural Fund. The mayor sits on that. There are 3 council members on that loan fund, and 3 members of Ron's board sit on that. So we want to continue that, and we would run the downtown business fund through that group. Okay. Thank you for your attention. Talking is fast. So as I said, this is going to be posted tomorrow. As soon as Jenny gets the recording, we put that up as well. She sends it to us. We'll have this presentation, which is essentially the executive summary of everything, posted, and it'll be available for comment until the 24th of June. And anytime you can also give written comments to City Hall if you don't have the ability to comment through the website. And then I've already mentioned this, we're going to get the draft plan, take your comments. We're finishing drafting the plan, largely the project profile. So all those projects that you saw, each of them have about a 6 or 8 page project profile. So that's what we're finishing on our end. That all goes to Danny and his team on July 8th. And then as I said, the state will begin to evaluate that plan. Take about the next half of this year to do that evaluation. And then the governor will make an announcement in terms of which of those projects of that whole, all the lists that you just saw will receive the funding. How she does that, I don't know, or you know, from the person, but and then the last piece then is the contracting. So we have Department of State contract with the city, home and community renewal, probably do the contract with the nonprofits and the art project, and then Empire State Development will be the contractor with the private sector. So the three state agencies still remain partners through this effort. So, thank you for your attention. It's a little warm in here, but thank you so much. And, you know, we're asking folks to submit comments online, but we're happy to entertain some questions this evening if anybody has.
From what you were saying, basically the whole evaluation process would probably take the rest of the year. So can we maybe expect that everything, you know, the projects will be announced in early next year and move forward from there?
I don't want to speak on behalf of the state, but can we expect that the projects might be announced in the beginning of next year?
We are kind of a wait and see at this point. We hope to complete review of the projects by the third quarter, and maybe by fourth quarter and early next year, we hope to announce the projects that have been funded. And so the secretary will make that announcement at the appropriate time.
Thank you.
As a member of the council, I want to thank everybody involved here for your diligence in what's going on right now. It's amazing how well things are going along. Thank you.
Probably some people probably sick of hearing this.
As a tribute to Lisa's leadership, I would say, my understanding is that we are the first of the 19 DRI communities to have a complete slate for the state.
That's correct. We're the front runners. We started off as the front runner and we ended as the front runner.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And, you know, thanks to Danny and his guidance from the Department of State. I've known Danny for a long time. And recently joined the Department of State, when I saw that he was going to be our project manager, we were thrilled. So thank you, Danny. For all of that.
I mean, the OPC also played an instrumental role in selecting the projects, guiding things along, and the folks on the ground, the CRG in particular, you know, Lisa and Michael and their consultants. Everyone did a great job. It was a real team effort. We're very glad and thankful that this community worked as individually collaboratively as it did, and I'm sure it will pay off once the project's installed.
So thank you very much for your attention and have a nice evening. And